Hollywood has a version of Roman weddings. Marble columns, wine, togas, a groom lifting a bride over a threshold while guests cheer and music plays. It looks romantic, it looks simple. It is almost entirely wrong. The real Roman wedding was one of the most ritualistic, superstition-soaked, legally complicated events in the ancient world. And the wedding night, the part everyone assumes they understand, was something far stranger, far more controlled, and in many cases, far more terrifying than anything the movies have shown you. Because the Roman bride wasn't just getting married, she was being transferred. From one man's legal authority to another's. From the girl she had been for her entire short life to a woman the law had just created, in a single day. Ready or not, here is what actually happened. The day itself. The wedding day began with omens. Romans were obsessively superstitious, and a wedding was not the moment to cut corners on ritual. An animal, usually a sheep or pig, was sacrificed, and its entrails examined by a priest called a haruspices. If the entrails looked wrong, the wedding could be postponed. The liver, in particular, was scrutinized. A bad liver meant bad luck. In Rome, a bad liver could derail weeks of family planning. Certain days were considered absolutely forbidden for weddings. The entire month of May was considered unlucky for marriage, a superstition so persistent that it survives in fragments even today. The calends, nones, and ides of each month were avoided. The days following major religious festivals were off-limits. A Roman family planning a wedding had to navigate a calendar full of danger. The ceremony itself was presided over by witnesses. At least 10 were required for the most formal marriages. The bride and groom joined right hands in the dextrarum iunctio, the joining of right hands, while a matron of honor, called the pronuba, guided the ritual. Crucially, the pronuba had to be a woman married only once and still living with her first husband. A divorced woman could not perform this role. A widow could not perform this role. Only a woman whose own marriage was intact and unbroken. Purity of precedent mattered enormously. The bride spoke the words that made it legally binding. Ubi tu Gaius ego Gaia. Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. It was a formula. The names were placeholders, Gaius and Gaia, the Roman equivalent of John and Jane. But the words were not decoration. They were a legal declaration. She was now a wife. The contract was real. Then came the feast, and then, as night fell, came the part everyone remembered. The procession, leaving home forever. The wedding procession was one of the most emotionally loaded moments in all of Roman ritual, and one of the most deliberately designed to be. As darkness fell, the bride was formally taken from her mother's arms. Taken, the word matters. There was a ritual called the captio, a symbolic abduction reenacting Rome's founding myth of the rape of the Sabine women, in which the earliest Romans seized women from a neighboring tribe to populate their new city. The groom or his companions would physically pull the bride away from her mother. The mother was supposed to resist. The bride was supposed to weep. This was not spontaneous emotion. It was scripted. A bride who did not weep at this moment was considered to have bad character. The tears were proof that she was a good daughter, that she genuinely loved her family, that she was not leaving willingly. A girl who left her father's house without weeping was a girl who had wanted to leave, and that, in Rome, was a deeply suspicious quality in a new wife. The procession moved through the streets by torchlight, 3 torches carried by boys, representing the fire being brought to the new household. The guests sang songs. Some of those songs were ribald, openly sexual, shouted into the night air as the procession passed. This was also ritual. It was supposed to embarrass the bride, to make her blush, to publicly mark her transition from girl to woman. The songs were called fescennine verses, and they pulled no punches. Ancient Roman guests at a wedding shouted things that would make a modern audience's eyes water. Nuts were scattered through the streets as the procession passed, symbolizing fertility, symbolizing the groom's own scattered boyhood.
an offering to the children of the neighborhood so they would not curse the marriage out of jealousy. At the door of the new husband's house, the bride stopped. She anointed the doorposts with oil and fat, a blessing, a marking of territory, and wound wool around them. Then came the threshold moment. She did not step over the threshold. She was lifted, but not for romance, not because the groom was gallant. She was lifted because it was considered catastrophically bad luck for a bride to stumble crossing into her new home. A stumble on the threshold was an omen of disaster for the marriage. The risk was too great to leave to chance, so she was carried. Control dressed up as courtesy.
The wedding night. Inside the house, the guests eventually left. The prunaba led the bride to the bridal chamber and formally placed her on the wedding couch, the lectus genialis, which was positioned in the atrium, the main hall of the house, as a permanent symbol of the marriage. Then the prunaba left, and the door closed. Here is where most people's assumptions about what followed are completely wrong. The Romans were not prudish. Their literature, their graffiti, their artwork, their poetry, all of it makes entirely clear that Rome was a society utterly comfortable with human sexuality in ways that would alarm a modern audience. Explicit images decorated public bathhouses. The walls of Pompeii are covered in graffiti that needs no translation. Roman love poetry is frank to a degree that surprises people who expect ancient writing to be formal and distant. And yet, the wedding night was governed by expectations so specific, so loaded with social and legal weight, that it bore almost no resemblance to anything spontaneous or mutual. The bride's primary obligation on her wedding night was to demonstrate that she was a virgin. In Roman law and Roman society, the virginity of a bride was not merely a personal matter, it was a legal and social guarantee, proof that any children born of the marriage were unquestionably the husband's. Paternity in Rome was not a medical concept, it was a social one, and it rested entirely on the reputation and proven virtue of the wife. A bride who was found not to be a virgin on her wedding night faced consequences that could range from immediate divorce with no dowry returned to complete social destruction. Her family's reputation was ruined alongside hers. Her father's honor was in that room with her. And the husband? His role on the wedding night was shaped by its own pressures. Roman masculinity was performance as much as anything else. To be a Roman man was to be active, dominant, in control. The wedding night was in part a demonstration of that, witnessed indirectly, noted by the household, confirmed by the mourning. It was private and yet entirely public in its implications. There is one more detail that almost never makes it into the popular history. The morning after the wedding, the bride was expected to emerge from the bridal chamber and present herself to the household. Not just dressed and composed enough to perform composure publicly. Her face, her bearing, her manner, all of it read as testimony. The Roman household was watching. They always were. What she became. After the wedding night, the Roman wife entered a legal state called manus, meaning hand, in which her husband had complete legal authority over her. Her property became his. Her legal identity was subsumed into the household he headed. She was, in the eyes of Roman law, equivalent in status to his daughter rather than his equal. But here is what is genuinely surprising. Over time, Roman women pushed back against manus marriage so successfully that by the late Republic it had largely fallen out of fashion. The more common arrangement in the later Roman period was sine manus, without hand, in which a wife retained her own legal identity, kept control of her own property, and remained under her father's legal authority rather than her husband's. She could own property, she could inherit, she could, under certain circumstances, divorce. The Roman wife is not the helpless figure history sometimes paints her as. Elite Roman women ran households that were small economies.
They managed slaves, finances, relationships, and social networks with a sophistication that their Greek counterparts, far more restricted in public life, could not have matched. They were not equal to Roman men under the law, but they were not powerless either, and they knew it. The Roman wedding night was not a beginning. It was a transfer, a legal, ritual, social transfer of a young woman from one world to another, from her father's authority to her husband's, from girl to wife, from childhood to the rest of her life, all compressed into a single day of ceremony, superstition, and scripted emotion. It was not romantic by our standards. It was not designed to be. It was designed to be witnessed, to be correct, to be legally unassailable. Romance, if it came at all, came later. After the ritual, after the law, after everything that had to happen had happened. 2,000 years later, we still throw rice at weddings. We still carry brides over thresholds. We still think May is an unlucky month to get married. Rome didn't fall as completely as we thought. If this one surprised you, hit the like button and subscribe. We go deep on the history you thought you knew every single week. Drop a comment below. What part of the Roman wedding shocked you most? We read every one. As always, we'll see you in the past.